Hi, I'm Anna, and welcome back to my channel, Building a Business. So in the rental real estate world, there's a lot of debate as to how much leverage is too much leverage. Is getting a mortgage a good financial decision, or is it a risky one? In this video, I will be discussing the pros and cons of having a mortgage versus purchasing a property outright, and I'll be using detailed examples to really illustrate the pros and cons that I'm talking about. My hope is that by the end of this video, you will have a better sense of how much leverage makes sense for you and what is a smart financial decision in your specific situation.
Okay, so let's start out with the cons. First of all, having a mortgage is almost always riskier. So there are a number of ways that having a mortgage increases your risk, but let's look specifically at a vacancy. So in this particular example, we're going to assume that we have a 4-month vacancy. Yes, 4 months is a relatively long time for a vacancy, and most of the time you'll have a far shorter vacancy time in between tenants. However, vacancies of 4 months do happen. So regardless of whether you have a mortgage or not, we're going to assume that you start with a cash reserves of $3,000 before the vacancy. We're also going to assume that your monthly expenses during a vacancy, for instance paying your taxes, insurance, and more, is $450 per month. So let's start with the case without a mortgage. After 1 month of vacancy, your cash reserves have gone from $3,000 to $2,550 because you've subtracted $450. If we continue to month 2, you're down to $2,100. After month 3, you're down to $1,650. And then after month 4, you're down to $1,200. Now that's a significant decrease of your cash reserves, but you still have cash reserves. And so as soon as you get that next tenant in, you can start building back your cash reserves. Now on the other hand, let's say that you have a mortgage. In this case, your expenses per month during the vacancy are the same as before, the $450 per month. But you're also paying a monthly mortgage payment of $350 per month. Now the monthly mortgage payment, again, you have to pay that regardless of whether you have a vacancy or not. And so in total, you have to pay $800 a month during the vacancy. So after month 1 of your vacancy, you have $2,200 remaining. After month 2, you have $1,400. After month 3, you have $600. And then after month 4, you have negative $200. So you've spent more during this vacancy than you have cash reserves to support. Now you may be thinking, well, $200 isn't that much. I can come up with $200. And that may be true, but what happens if the situation is worse? Let's say, for instance, that you have a 4-month vacancy right after having a significant $1,000 repair. So in this case, your cash reserves before the vacancy are already down from $3,000 to $2,000 because you just had to pay $1,000 and you haven't yet had time to replenish your cash reserves. So in this case, your expenses per month are the same. Without a mortgage, it's $450, and with a mortgage, it's $800. So without a mortgage, at the end of your 4 months, you're down to $200. You're still positive, so everything's good, but you're going to have to work hard to build back up your cash reserves. Now for the example with a mortgage, after only 3 months, you're negative $400, and after the 4 months, you're negative $1,200. $1,200 is significantly more than the $200 you had to come up with last time. And if you can't come up with the money, you may face foreclosure and lose the property. Now, in my opinion, there's a fairly simple way around this issue. I would argue that the cash reserves you have on hand for a property with a mortgage should be significantly more than the cash reserves you have on hand for a property that's worth the equal amount but doesn't have a mortgage. Having extra cash reserves for a property with a mortgage just ensures that you're more able to deal with any long vacancy or other issues that may come up. Now, the second con of having a mortgage is that you will potentially owe more to the bank or whatever lending institution you used than the property is actually worth. So let's look at an example. This is a graph from the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis that shows the average sales price of homes sold in the United States over a given period of time. And you can see I've highlighted the peak right before the Great Recession. So in quarter 1 of 2007, the average home price was $257,400. You can see there's a great drop-off right after that, and at the very bottom in quarter 1 of 2009, the average home price was $208,400. Now that's a significant decrease. You can look at these two graphs here to see a close-up of this drop, and now let's look at an example. So let's say you purchase an average priced property in Q1 of 2007 for $257,400. Let's say you got an FHA loan because it was your personal property, and so you only put down 3.5%, or $9,009. That means your initial loan amount was $248,391. Let's assume you got a mortgage interest rate of 4%. That means that after 2 years, as in Q1 of 2009, the equity you have in the home is $17,936, and the amount that you still owe on the property is $239,464. Let's say, for instance, you lost your job and you aren't able to continue making your mortgage payments. Therefore, you need to sell the property. But if you look at the bottom graph, you'll see that your home is now only worth $208,400. So you can see that the amount you owe the bank for the property is actually more than the property will sell for. Therefore, you're underwater on your mortgage, and you definitely don't want to ever get in that position. There are a few ways to get around that. One would be to put significantly more than 3.5% down on any mortgage. Most investors, unless they're doing a house hack, have to put significantly more down. Generally, people put around 20% down, but you could put significantly more down as well if you want to be even safer. Another way for investors to avoid this specific problem is to make sure that your property is always going to cash flow so that you never are in the position where you have to sell it. If the property is making you money each month, then you can keep holding on to it and keep making money off of it until the value of the home rises again to the point where you could sell it. So our next con is that having a mortgage will mean you'll get less cash flow. This is because almost all of the expenses that you incur as a real estate investor will be the same regardless of whether you have a mortgage or not, with the exception of your monthly mortgage payment. And so if you don't have a monthly mortgage payment, then your expenses each month are far less, meaning that the cash flow per month is far greater. The next con is that it simply takes a lot of time and energy and paperwork to get a mortgage, and sometimes, depending on your situation, you might not be able to qualify for a mortgage, or at least not qualify for a mortgage with terms that make sense to you. The next con is that you're less likely to have your offer accepted if you require financing. Sellers are far more inclined to accept an offer if it's an all-cash offer. Your lower all-cash offer may even be accepted over a higher financing contingent offer. The next con is that, in general, the properties need to be in relatively good condition to get a mortgage. So if you're planning on doing fixer-upper properties, there are still financing options for you, but they will likely be more limited. Another con is that it's hard to get a loan within an LLC. In general, especially for conventional mortgages, you'll have to get it in your name instead of in your LLC. The last con is not really a con in my opinion, and I'll explain why later, but a lot of people see it as a con of getting a mortgage, and so I'll discuss it here. Essentially, it's that you have to pay a lot of interest if you have a mortgage. Let's look at 4 examples. In each of these examples, the property value is $100,000, your down payment percent is 20%, therefore you put down $20,000, and the loan length for all 4 mortgages is 30 years. Then each of the mortgages has a different interest rate, either 3.5%, 4%, 4.5%, or 5%. The bottom row of each of these mortgage tables will show you how much interest in total you've paid by the time you've paid off your full mortgage. So you can see that the lower the interest rate, the less interest in total you pay. The part that alarms people is the actual values. So let's take, for instance, mortgage 1. You will pay almost $50,000 in interest, but remember that your down payment was only $20,000. So your interest is 2.5 times as much as your down payment was. Clearly that's a lot of money in comparison to your down payment. Then if you go to mortgage 4, your total interest paid was almost $75,000. That's equal to almost 4 times your down payment. By looking at these numbers, you can see why some people might feel that the amount of interest you pay is just totally unreasonable. However, I disagree, and I'll explain that with my first pro, which is your potential to make significantly more. So let's look at an example. So let's assume that you have $100,000 to invest in rental real estate, and you're trying to decide whether to invest with or without a mortgage. So in this table, we're assuming no mortgage. Let's say you find a single-family home to invest in that's worth $100,000 and meets the 1% rule, meaning that it rents for $1,000 a month. Let's say the monthly expenses are $400 per month. Therefore, the income you make every month is $600. Now let's say instead you decide to purchase 5 single-family homes with 20% down, each worth $100,000. If you put 20% down on 5 properties that are each worth $100,000, then you're essentially putting $20,000 down on 5 properties, which in total equals $100,000. So again, in this situation with 5 mortgages, you have spent your full $100,000, as with the example with no mortgage. So in terms of the mortgage information, you've put 20% down, your loan length is 30 years, your interest rate is 4%, and therefore your monthly mortgage payment per mortgage is $382. Now, as we saw from the example without a mortgage, your income before paying your mortgage payment would be your monthly rent of $1,000 minus your monthly expenses of $400. You then have to subtract your monthly mortgage payment of $382, and you're left with an income per month per single-family home of $218. This clearly is significantly less than the income you're making without a mortgage of $600, but that value is per home, and you have 5 homes making $218 per month. Therefore, your total income with all 5 properties combined is $1,090 per month. Clearly a lot more than the income you're making without a mortgage. So on average, every single month, it pays to have 5 mortgages versus 1 property paid off. Now let's look at what happens after the 30 years when all of your mortgages are paid off. So without a mortgage, again, your income per month is $600. Therefore, your total income after 30 years would be $600 times 12 months per year times 30 years, which equals $216,000. Not too bad. Your equity, assuming no appreciation, is the same $100,000 that you purchased the property for. However, if we assume a more realistic 3% appreciation, then the equity you own in that property is $242,726. Now, if we look at the example with mortgages, your income per month, again, is $1,090. Therefore, your income after 30 years would be $1,090 times 12 months times 30 years. And that equals $392,400. Now, because your properties were all worth $100,000 and you have 5 of them and you've paid off all of your mortgages, your equity, assuming no appreciation, is $500,000, but your equity, assuming 3% appreciation, is $1.2 million. So just to reiterate, if you do decide to get 5 mortgages instead of purchasing 1 property outright, then you'll receive over 1.8 times as much income in 30 years and 5 times as much equity. That's a pretty good deal if you ask me. Of course, the numbers are going to vary from person to person in terms of what mortgage you get, how much you put down, and other factors, but I hope this example shows to you the power of mortgages. Now for the second pro, you need less money to purchase your first property. In the previous example, we assumed that you had $100,000 starting out and you were ready to invest that $100,000 right then and there. However, more likely you'll decide you want to invest in rental real estate and then start building up enough to save for a property. Let's say that you're able to save $10,000 a year. If we use the numbers in the previous example, then you could purchase your first mortgage after 2 years and get your journey started. However, if you want to purchase a property outright, you'd have to wait 10 years to save up $100,000 to purchase your very first property. The next pro is that mortgage interest payments are tax deductible. When you fill out your Schedule E, you will be able to deduct your mortgage interest payments, and you are able to do this regardless of whether you're itemizing your taxes as an individual or not. Here you can see a screenshot from the IRS government website where it specifically says that mortgage interests costs as an expense that you can deduct as the owner of a rental property. The next pro of getting a mortgage is diversification. If we think about the example of purchasing 1 property outright versus purchasing 5 properties with mortgages, you can see how potentially having 5 properties diversifies your portfolio because you're not dependent on 1 property. Similar to stock investing, in general, it's riskier to invest in 1 company versus investing in general index funds. In addition to simply owning more properties, you could also strategically purchase properties in different areas of the country and in different markets, so that should one city start to struggle, you can offset that drop by having stronger performing assets in other cities. Similarly, using mortgages will give you easier access to different asset classes. For instance, let's say you want to purchase multifamily properties in addition to single-family homes. A multifamily property is going to be significantly more expensive than a single-family home in general, and so if you're willing to use a mortgage to purchase that property, you will be able to purchase it for a lot less money. Expanding to different asset classes also helps you with your diversification. So this is my list that I've come up with of pros and cons for using a mortgage in rental real estate. If you have any other pros or cons that you think I've missed, please leave them in the comments below. And ultimately, I just want to end on the fact that regardless of whether you use mortgages or not and how many mortgages and what % down you put, the most important thing is that you minimize your stress. And so what will allow you to sleep at night? You've now seen the math of how beneficial a mortgage can be financially. However, if having a mortgage is going to give you an unreasonable amount of stress, then don't do it. Ultimately, you have to do what's right for you, regardless of what the numbers and the math tell you.
Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like it below and subscribe to follow along on my journey.